A little girl trembles, hiding in the shadows, hoping desperately not to be found. Suddenly, a grotesque sound echoes from behind, growing louder and closer. Her heart races as fear consumes her. Something is approaching. It turns out to be a zombie. It's lifeless yet hungry, seeking the taste of her sweet flesh. The monster inches closer, and the girl does her best to stay perfectly silent, barely daring to breathe. But her efforts are in vain. The creature senses her presence, and her worst fears come true. It has found her. Panic takes over, and she bolts, running for her life with all the strength her tiny legs can muster. Yet, her attempt is futile. The zombie catches her effortlessly, grabbing her with an unrelenting grip. Terrified, the little girl cries out, pleading with the monster not to eat humans. But the creature, driven by its natural instincts, looms over her, ready to devour her flesh. Just when it seems all hope is lost, something unexpected happens. What seemed like a horrifying nightmare turns out to be nothing more than a playful game. The zombie is none other than her mother, acting like an actual zombie to make her daughter laugh. The little girl chuckles, her fake fear melting away, and playfully tells her mom to stop. Unlike most zombies, her mother retains the love she has for her daughter, a love strong enough to transcend even death. In this post-apocalyptic world filled with despair, the mother thanks heaven for one thing, the chance to still be there for her daughter, to protect her, and to cherish the bond they share. The story begins with the lady clutching her bleeding and injured arm, obviously caused by a zombie, desperately seeking help. She manages to find a spot to stay, or rather, hide from a mutated zombie that is hot on her tracks. Just when it seems like she's about to meet her end, the mutant is distracted by a sudden noise. Shifting its attention, the mutant turns towards the sound, revealing some people who instantly recognize it as a mutated zombie. The lady is immediately terrified as one of the men advises them to run. But before she can act, the lady is instantly killed by another zombie that ambushes her from behind. And just like that, the fool meets his end too. Chaos breaks out as the zombies feast on the humans. Moans of pain fill the air, mingling with the pungent smell of blood. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the lady, exhausted from her escape from the mutant. Suddenly, she realized it's time. At the same time, her body begins to undergo a horrifying transformation. She's mutating into a zombie. Sensing her grim situation, she becomes resolute. Despite everything, she is determined to bring her child safely into the world. With that, she braces herself, summoning every ounce of strength she has left to ensure her baby is delivered. The mutation rapidly spreads through her body, but she steels herself, unwavering and fixated on her goal. 7 years pass. It is now a post-apocalyptic world. Social order has crumbled, society has collapsed, and terrifying creatures roam the cities. And that's where we cut to the present scene. She introduces her child, her precious daughter, Chukbok. With deep gratitude, she blesses the heavens for giving her the chance to be a mother. The first chapter ends here. We see little Chukbok wanting to go outside, but her mom disagrees, growling in the process. Chukbok protests loudly, expressing her desire to follow her mom, but Z-Mama firmly refuses, knowing it's far too dangerous outside. However, Chukbok remains resolute, insisting she wants to follow her mom to get Gomdol. Z-Mama, as we'll call her until her real name is revealed, tries to calm her down, explaining that zombies might hear her voice if she keeps crying. Chukbok, in a last-ditch effort, pulls her cut face and sobs, hoping to persuade Z-Mama. Taking Chukbok's small hand in hers, Z-Mama promises to bring Gomdol back. And as for who or what Gomdol is, I guess we'll find out soon enough. With that promise, Chukbok tells her mom to come back quickly. Z-Mama flashes a grin in agreement before departing to get Gomdol. Time passes slowly, and the scene shifts to a city swarming with zombies. On her way, Z-Mama encounters a strange mutant zombie. The zombie shoots out its tongue like a frog, but Z-Mama easily dodges it as if it's nothing. Next, she reveals her razor-sharp nails and prepares to attack. Quickly closing the distance between herself and the creature, she dodges its next strike, then appearing some kind of stinger. With precise strikes, she stabs the mutant multiple times, paralyzing it. The creature collapses like yesterday's trash. Realizing the monster is no longer a threat, she drools by the sight. After the feasting, Z-Mama notes internally that she feels satisfied after feeding, but this time tasted a bit weird. Her moment is interrupted when she notices survivors in the distance. One survivor, dressed in blue, tells his partner to stop wasting bullets because the zombies won't move unless the flashlight is pointed at them. His partner counters, saying there are too many zombies to deal with. Mama observes them, wondering why people would be in the city at this hour. She remarks to herself how the flashlight and gunshots only make the zombies more aggressive, but quickly dismisses it as none of her concern. Then, her eyes catch something. The man in blue with a huge backpack. Fixing her gaze on him, Mama prepares herself. She charges into the fray. The guy with the backpack notices something approaching, and his partner tells him to use the flashlight. Immediately, Mama tosses a rock, destroying the light source and hitting the partner in the process. With her gained momentum, she kicks the man with incredible force, sending him flying. The guy with the backpack asks if his partner is okay, but quickly notices Mama. Trembling in fear, he points his gun at her, yelling for her to go away. This only enrages Mama, prompting her to reveal her hunting tools. The man doesn't stand a chance as she handed his behind to him easily. Then, we shift to a new scene. A man walking slowly while supporting himself, contemplating his situation. Holding a rock, he realizes it's not enough and thinks about what he needs to survive. Suddenly, his thoughts are interrupted when Mama appears. On high alert, she uses her stinger to strike at the man. He can only watch in horror as her spike narrowly stops close to his neck. Breathing a sigh of relief, he realizes he's still in danger as Mama charges toward him, seemingly ready to devour him. Breaking into a cold sweat, he braces himself, or so we think. It turns out this man is Gamdol, Mama's husband. She hugs him tightly, relieved to have found him. Gamdol, in turn, thanks her for coming for him and recovering his backpack, which was stolen by the robbers. We catch a glimpse of what happened to the robber from earlier. The guy, looking like someone who is on the brink of death, loudly yells at the zombies to stay away. Suddenly, the zombies begin backing off. The fool thinks he's going to survive, assuming he has some kind of resistance. But he doesn't notice what's behind him. When he finally turns around, it's already too late. What happens, happens. We flash back to Gamdol's past, where he is seen rummaging through the rubble, searching for something useful. He becomes excited when he finds a flashlight, knowing how rare it is to find one in working condition. With that, he decides to head back, understanding that venturing deeper is like inviting trouble with zombies. But his curiosity gets the better of him. He begins questioning whether he should risk going deeper to search for food. Initially, he decides to play it safe and return. Or so we thought, because the next moment shows him venturing deeper, armed with a gun and flashlight, hoping to find food or something useful. As he turns a corner, he is shocked by what he sees. It's a limbless zombie, clearly dead. Staring at the zombie, he wonders if it was attacked by another zombie. Seeing a trail of blood, he concludes that the zombie's attacker might still be inside. He decides it's none of his business and prepares to leave, reminding himself that curiosity killed the cat. But he freezes in his tracks when he hears something unexpected. He knows he could just walk away and look elsewhere, but the sound intrigues him. It's something impossible to hear in a post-apocalyptic world. Then, he is startled by a stinger pointed at him and is drawn to the sight before him. It turns out to be Mama feeding a baby. The scene shocks him to his core. And that's how the two of them first encountered each other. Back to the present, Gamdol and Mama encounter a group of zombies blocking their path. Mama quickly deals with them using her stinger. Gamdol mentally remarks how amazing his wife is. As they run from the zombies, he notes they need to find somewhere safe. Suddenly, they are both stunned by what they see ahead. They're cornered, with nowhere to run, as the zombies express their hunger and desire to devour them. Looking from the top of the building, Gamdol comments that the flashlight is useless in this situation and laments how troublesome it is. Turning his attention to the zombies, he asks Mama if she can handle them. She inwardly notes that she can, but it won't be easy. Just as they prepare to fight off some of the zombies and escape, Gamdol is suddenly pulled down of the building. Mama is stunned. Immediately, she grabs his hand with one hand while holding a broken rod in the other. Gamdol exclaims that it feels like his leg is going to be ripped apart. Looking below, he notices something unusual and questions where the tentacles came from. His gaze sharpens and anxiety creeps in as he sees the source of the tentacles. It turns out to be a giant mutant zombie boss. Gamdol quickly realizes what they're up against. Meanwhile, the zombie boss eagerly anticipates the taste of fresh meat. Noticing how many zombies are waiting for them to fall, Mama realizes their dire situation. She begins to wonder what she can do at this point since she can't hold on any longer. If things continue like this, they could both die. That's when an idea strikes her. It's risky, but it might work. She suddenly lets go of the rod. Gom-dol is stunned by her action. As they begin to fall, or rather, as he is pulled, he starts screaming in panic. Meanwhile, the boss mutated zombie watches with saliva dripping, its tongue hanging out in anticipation. Quickly, Z-Mama uses her stinger. She grabs an unfortunate zombie standing at the top of the building with ease. Betting everything on this move, she hurls the zombie at the boss mutant's face while still midair. At the same time, she uses her stinger to stab the tentacle wrapped around Gom-dol's leg. The tentacle snaps off immediately. However, Z-Mama knows the final phase of her plan depends on their landing. She resolves to deal with the remaining zombies and protect her husband, or so she thought, because instead, Gom-dol wraps himself around her and braces for the fall. Z-Mama is stunned by his action. Both of them crash onto the boss's face, using it to cushion their landing. The boss's subordinates watch in awe. Bouncing off its face, Gom-dol continues to shield Z-Mama as they land. Without wasting time, he quickly lifts her and bolts out of the scene. However, the boss mutant watches their escape, enraged. Revealing its true face hidden within its mouth, it yells, "Fresh meat." The scene cuts to Z-Mama, noticing Gom-dol out of breath. She tries to scold him, growling in frustration, wondering why he acted so recklessly despite not being a zombie. All he can hear are her growls. When she expresses concern that he is the father of her daughter, Gom-dol cuts her off. He asks about her well-being, completely ignoring his own bleeding head. It's clear our guy doesn't see her as a zombie. He apologizes for making her anxious and dragging her into the situation. Finally, he reassures her that he's fine and can handle himself. Then he wonders aloud how they're going to deal with the horde of zombies chasing them. Z-Mama, on the other hand, can only imagine how much of an idiot he is, someone willing to hurt himself to protect her. Inwardly, she calls him a stupid husband. Suddenly, a spike projectile flies in from behind, impaling her in the stomach. Gom-dol is left in shock. Gom-dol, looking at Z-Mama, screamed, "Honey." Enraged, he shifted his attention behind them, determined to find which zombie dared to hurt his wife. It was the boss mutant. Clearly, its tentacles weren't its only weapon. The true face of the boss emerged in the form of a grotesque tongue, mocking them as it repeated, "Fresh meat." Turning his attention back to Z-Mama, Gom-dol asked if she was okay. While she brushed it off as just a scratch, suddenly, she was yanked back by some kind of rope. Annoyed, she thought to herself, "These zombies are really getting on my nerves." Without wasting time, Gom-dol began rummaging through his huge backpack, telling her to hold on and buy him some time. Z-Mama easily dealt with some of the smaller zombies, tossing them aside like yesterday's trash as they chased them. After some time, Gom-dol finally found something useful. Tossing an object behind them as they continued dashing, a zombie was the first to notice it. The zombie, clearly puzzled, inspected the object, a grenade. With a loud boom, the grenade exploded, and Gom-dol rejoiced that it had actually worked. Like that, multiple grenades flew through the air, engulfing the entire horde in flames. One zombie managed to survive, muttering soft growls, but its luck was short-lived. Suddenly, the boss mutant devoured the surviving zombie, still screaming the phrase, "Fresh meat." Realizing the boss had survived, Gom-dol informed Z-Mama that only one enemy remained. He wondered what they could do next. Quickly, Z-Mama gestured for him to hand her another grenade. Though confused, Gom-dol complied, wondering what her plan was. And just like that, she prepared herself and charged forward with incredible speed. The boss noticed her action and quickly sent spikes and tentacles toward her. Gom-dol, seeing the projectiles coming, quickly ducked while shouting a warning for his wife to dodge as well. But Z-Mama abruptly stopped and pulled the pin from the grenade. Concerned, Gom-dol yelled, asking what she was doing, pointing out that the distance was too far for a direct hit. He was left dumbstruck by what he saw next. Z-Mama was about to perform a volley kick on the grenade. Effortlessly dodging spikes mid-move, she executed a perfect kick, sending the grenade flying with great force toward the boss mutant. The zombie boss wore a puzzled expression on its monstrous face. Driven purely by its instinct to devour and lacking any proper brain power, it prepared to consume the grenade. With a massive boom, the boss mutant's head exploded, sending a shockwave through the area. Z-Mama didn't miss the chance to flash a popular hand gesture from the States. Meanwhile, Gom-dol ran toward her, showering her with praise for her skill. The scene changed to a building. Inside, Z-Mama tried to assure him that she was okay and told him not to be anxious. Gom-dol expressed relief that her wound was already healing, while she silently thought that he was the one who needed to be more careful. Playfully touching his head, She wondered how careful an idiot like him could really be. Gom-dol then informed her they needed to return home to see their daughter, who must be waiting for them. Inside their house, Gom-dol happily announced their arrival. Immediately, little Chukbok dashed toward him, shouting excitedly that she had finished her homework. Without hesitation, Gom-dol lifted her up and showed his affection, asking if she had a good day. She happily replied that she did and even completed her homework. He congratulated her for a job well done and decided to reward her. Pulling out a chocolate bar, little Chukbok was left in disbelief at the sight, drooling at the treat. With sparkling eyes, she thanked him, while he teased her, joking that she only called him daddy when he had something for her. Meanwhile, Z-Mama stood nearby, silently watching their heartwarming exchange. No matter how difficult her life was, she always felt energized seeing the smiles on their faces. With renewed determination, she decided to protect them with everything she had. As the family continued their cheerful chat, the scene shifted. A strange figure stood outside, silently listening to their conversation. The scene begins with little Chukbok eagerly tasting and munching on her food. Both parents watch her adorable expressions as she enjoys her meal. Gom-dol asks if she's enjoying the food, prompting her to respond with an enthusiastic yes. Pleased, he promises to get her more. Excited, Chukbok offers Gom-dol a bite. He agrees and, after tasting it, comments on how delicious it is, especially since it came from her. His reaction makes her laugh happily. Chukbok then turns to her mom and asks her to have a bite. This startles Z-Mama. A bit nervous, Z-Mama hesitates as Chukbok persistently presses her to eat. Noticing Z-Mama's discomfort, Gom-dol intervenes, telling Chukbok that her mom is already full. Puzzled, Chukbok remarks that she didn't see her mom eat anything. Gom-dol reassures her, insisting that she already ate. Still confused, Chukbok innocently asks, "Does mommy even eat? I've never seen her eat before." Taking her daughter's hand, Z-Mama assures her not to worry, explaining that she's already full. She encourages Chukbok to enjoy her food. Though a bit confused by her mother's actions, Chukbok continues to eat. However, she can't help but wonder why her mom doesn't eat, despite how delicious the food is. In the next scene, Chukbok tries sharing her favorite snack with Z-Mama. Holding up a cookie, she pleads with her mom to take a bite, stunning Z-Mama once again. Mentally, Z-Mama thanks her but admits to herself that she can't eat human food. However, looking at her daughter's eager face, she realizes she can't say no. Deciding to humor her, Z-Mama reaches for the cookie. Suddenly, Chukbok pulls the cookie away, leaving Z-Mama dumbstruck. Chukbok inspects the cookie and tells her mom to wait a moment. In truth, she's desperately trying to divide the cookie into 2 equal halves. After much effort, the result is uneven. Holding both pieces in her hands, she stares at them for a moment before handing the smaller half to Z-Mama. "Here, enjoy it," Chukbok says cheerfully, leaving Z-Mama speechless. She silently watches her daughter, who's willing to share the snack she clearly wanted to eat herself. When Z-Mama hesitates, Chukbok warns her that she eat the cookie herself if her mom doesn't want it. Still silent, she watches as greed briefly flickers in her daughter's eyes. But just as Chukbok looks ready to eat the cookie, she pauses. Thinking to herself, she decides she wants her mom to eat it after all. Meanwhile, Gom-dol, watching from the background, jokingly asks if he can have it instead. But before he can finish, Chukbok shoves both pieces into her mouth, thinking to herself, "I'll try again with another one." And so, Chukbok continues trying to make her mother eat various foods. Each time, Z remains silent. Eventually, Z-Mama, veins visibly pulsing with annoyance, scolds her daughter. "Chukbok, stop bothering me. Cut it out. Do you enjoy annoying me?" Hurt and teary-eyed, Chukbok apologizes in a soft voice. Her expression softens as she explains that she's never seen her mom eat and assumes she must be hungry. Realizing her mistake and how her silence has worried her daughter, Z-Mama resolves to be honest and explain everything. But suddenly, she freezes. "Mommy, what's wrong?" Chukbok asks, clueless. Sensing the scent of Chukbok's nosebleed, Z-Mama's zombie instincts kick in. Her body reacts instinctively, expressing the overwhelming urge to devour. A loud slam sound is heard as Z-Mama forces herself out of the house. Gom-dol, curious about the noise, turns to Chukbok. "Did mommy go out?" he asks. Chukbok affirms, while he notices her nosebleed. The scene shifts to Z-Mama battling a mutated zombie. The zombie writhes in pain as she easily delivers a powerful blow. Quickly readying her fingers for another attack, she slashes upward, ending the creature. As she feeds on the zombie's corpse, Mama reflects on her role as a mother. She struggles to suppress her zombie instincts, determined to protect her family at all costs. Later that night, as her family sleeps, Mama contemplates how dangerously close she came to losing control. The scent of a child's blood. She thinks it's terrifyingly delicious. It was a close call. Looking at her daughter, Mama silently vows to be extra careful moving forward. Sweet dreams, she whispers. Unbeknownst to her, little Chuck Bok opens one eye. From her expression, it seems she's up to something. The scene shifts to the next day. With a smile, Gom Dole announces that he will be leaving and tells Chuck Bok to stay safe until he returns. He also points out that she shouldn't wake her mother because she needs to rest. As he departs, Chuck Bok waves and adds that he should get her some chocolate, which he agrees to. The little one remains smiling as the door closes, but the next moment, her expression shifts, revealing she's up to no good. She prepares herself and decides to head out, taking the opportunity while her mother is still asleep. The scene shifts to outside. The little one walks past a zombie, ignoring it completely, as if it were nothing. As she explores, she encounters two figures and hides behind a rock, observing them. Noticing bloodstains on a wall, she quickly uses one to draw a happy face. As she walks away, she wonders aloud that she needs to find something good quickly. We then see her searching among the debris and rubble, but finding nothing worthwhile. She looks a bit exhausted, realizing she hasn't found anything useful yet. But then, her eyes light up as she spots something. It turns out to be candies. Excited, she celebrates, thrilled that she's finally found something valuable. She rejoices at the thought of her parents praising her for her discovery and can't wait to share it. However, she hesitates, wondering if it's a good idea to tell them she found it outside. She resolves to give each candy to her parents and herself. But then she pauses, struck by an idea and remembering something important. She decides to give one to Hira, something we will eventually learn about. With that, she dashes off, hoping Hira will like it. Meanwhile, we return to the two figures from before. The lady with the ponytail comments that it's their lucky day. They never expected to find a child here. The man in a mask voices his opinion, saying the child is obviously with her parents. However, the lady questions if the little one might be an orphan or abandoned. The man suggests looting her belongings, which she thinks is a ridiculous response. While the man wonders what they could do with a child, the lady, with a sinister smile, exclaims that they could sell her to the cannibal tribe for a good price. The man recalls the name and asks if the tribe she mentioned is the group of nutcases obsessed with human flesh. She confirms, adding that they would definitely buy Chuck Bok at a good price. Both are caught off guard as Chuck Bok suddenly makes a turn. The lady immediately hurries to capture her before anyone else, while the man in the mask warns her to be careful. She brushes off his concern. The man, distracted by thoughts of a feast, doesn't notice someone approaching from behind him. In an instant, he is deleted and taken down. The nameless ponytail pauses and looks back, slightly puzzled. Standing there is a white-haired lady holding an axe, and she is kind of familiar with the man's lifeless body on the ground. It's unclear who she is or what just happened. The ponytail lady questions the white-haired woman's identity, asking if she's Chuck Bok's guardian or something. The woman dismisses the idea, pretending to call for her comrade. She turns to look back, giving the ponytail woman the chance to charge at her with a bat, planning to strike her down and send her to her ancestors. Thinking she's fooled the woman and calling her an idiot, she acts too late. The white-haired woman, clearly experienced, finished her off swiftly. As the ponytail lady's lifeless body collapses, the white-haired woman watches calmly, unfazed. Meanwhile, Chuck Bok tries to stifle a scream, hearing footsteps approaching. The white-haired woman strides toward her, clearly annoyed. Chuck Bok, startled, realizes this woman has finally found her. Calling Chuck Bok by name, she realized it was Hira. In context, we see her at Chuck Bok's place in the previous chapter. When Hira asked what she was doing there, Chuck Bok barely had time to explain before a zombie launched itself toward them. But Hira easily dealt with it like it was nothing. As soon as the zombie came into contact with sunlight, it disintegrated. Chuck Bok was amazed, staring in awe, while Hira reminded her of when she had said not to go into dark places. Before Chuck Bok could explain herself, Hira asked why she was outside and what her mom was doing. Faced with so many questions, Chuck Bok struggled to come up with the right answer. In the end, she was met with a bump on her head as Hira instructed her to recite the rules. Chuck Bok began reciting, and when she got to the last and most important rule, not heading out alone, Hira's expression changed. She asked why Chukbok had broken the rule, demanding an answer while Chukbok trembled in silence, holding her breath. Hira sternly explained that it had been almost a year now, and Chukbok must follow the rules, emphasizing what could happen if she ran into bad people. She warned her not to try it again, but Chukbok immediately cut her off mid-sentence. With confidence, Chukbok exclaimed that she was all grown up now and Hira couldn't stop her. Noticing Hira's sudden change in facial expression, Chukbok quickly turned away, thinking to herself that Hira was really something and that she must have pissed her off. But to her surprise, Hira agreed, saying that if Chukbok was grown up, she could do whatever she wanted. She even offered to take her to where adults go. Chukbok perked up instantly, asking if she could really go to places meant for adults. We can only wonder what Hira was planning at that moment. Meanwhile, Chukbok was excited and expressed her eagerness to go. Her enthusiasm vanished immediately when she discovered the place. It was a dark, awful room. She quickly expressed her desire to go home, noting how terrible the place was. But she soon realized she could sense Hira's presence nearby and asked where she was. Hira replied that she wasn't sure, obviously trying to mess with the little one. Panicking, Chukbok yelled at her to stop playing, but Hira teased her, asking if she didn't come here of her own free will. Hira continued, mocking Chukbok, asking if she wasn't a grown-up and why she was scared. Chukbok struggled to find the right words. Hira explained how zombies love dark places and how people still came here to find valuable things. That's why the place was so awful. It was filled with blood. Suddenly, Chukbok tripped and fell with a thud. Looking at her hand, she saw it was stained with blood. Hira remarked that she'd never seen adults escape places like this alive. At that moment, Chukbok began pleading for forgiveness, saying she didn't want to be a grown-up anymore and just wanted to go home. She thought about her parents and wondered if this was what they had to go through. Suddenly, Hira appeared, supporting Chukbok's claim. Looking at the sobbing Chukbok, Hira explained that adults had no choice but to come to places like this. She instructed Chukbok to remember this event and make sure it never happened again. With that, she extended her hand and said, "Let's go home." Without hesitation, the little one quickly agreed. The scene shifted outside the city. Hira told Chukbok to never leave her home again unless it was with her parents, and Chukbok agreed. Chukbok then asked if she could tell her parents about this, but Hira replied that it must remain a secret. With that, the little one told Hira to come closer for a moment, leaving her puzzled. As Hira kneeled down, Chukbok revealed she had something for her. It turned out she had planned to get a little payback for being left in the dark. Chukbok scolded Hira for scaring her and told her to never do it again. Then, with a smile, she offered Hira a piece of candy. Looking at it, Chukbok proudly explained that she found it herself and that it was for Hira. With that, she waved goodbye, hoping to see her again next time. After Chukbok left, Hira stared at the candy with a smile, noting that Chukbok would grow to be a strong woman in the future. Meanwhile, as Chukbok returned home, she noticed something strange about her finger. The scene shifts to a winter period, showing Zimama and Gomdol scavenging for useful items. Suddenly, Gomdol surprises her by wrapping a red scarf around her neck, commenting that he found the perfect size for her. She reciprocates his action with a smile, showing her appreciation. He is excited that she likes it and remarks how cute she looks with the red scarf. Suddenly, their moment is interrupted when they notice that Chukbok is missing. Meanwhile, the little one is off on her own adventure, feeling excited as she searches continuously for anything useful. She suddenly comes across Hira, marking their first meeting. The little one is dumbfounded, and Hira notices Chukbok staring at her. In a calm tone, Hira tells Chukbok to leave, but Chukbok, on the other hand, wants to know if Hira is hurt. Despite Hira's insistence for her to go away, Chukbok cluelessly expresses concern about her looking sick but stops mid-sentence. Hira interrupts her, asking if she didn't hear her, and with a hint of annoyance, tells her to get lost. Still clueless, Chukbok asks what she means by get lost, saying she doesn't understand. Hira then tells her to go to her parents and stop getting on her nerves. But she is taken aback as she watches Chukbok breathing on her hands. When Hira asks her to let go, the little one insists on warming her hands. Hira tries to stop her, but seeing the cute Chukbok making a good effort to warm her hands, she stops midway, clearly moved by the little one's warm gesture. Meanwhile, Chukbok wakes up slowly, realizing she fell asleep, and thinks about Hira before falling back to sleep. The scene shifts to a wandering horde of zombies in the city. Inside one of the buildings, Gomdol comments about the active horde, noting that it's due to the dark clouds making the zombies active even in the middle of the day. Z-Mama trembles as she realizes this is the last pharmacy in the area. Because of the active horde, Gomdol advises them to wait a bit, but she rejects the advice. You see, the reason for her anxiety is that she blames herself for Chukbok's condition. Looking at Chukbok's finger, multiple questions race through her mind. Will she be okay? Can it be cured? She notes that it's a mutation and believes it's all her fault. Gomdo, trying to support her, assures her that everything will be fine and taking a break wouldn't hurt. But she disagrees, shaking her head, thinking that the more she rests, the more Chukbok might suffer. Gomdo silently observes her worried expression. He shocks her by stating that the situation is pointless, and like other locations, there will be no medicine or supplies here either. With that, he suggests they head to a place called the Hope Village, noting that he heard there's a doctor there. Z-Mama, touching his palm, asks if what he said is true. He agrees, noting it's their last hope, but mentions a problem: the entrance fee to the village. He further adds that they only accept something valuable, which they can't find here. So much for the name Hope Village XD. But Gomdol instantly frowns in shock when Z-Mama responds by saying she will head to the dungeon village instead. He quickly reminds her that the place is filled with dangerous zombies, even for someone like her, hence the name. She explains that it's not a problem for her if she goes alone. She mentions that because zombies attacked the village, many resources remain intact. However, she must avoid running into the dungeon boss. Gomdol scratches his head, deciding he will stay with Chukbok since the situation is beyond his ability to handle. He makes her promise to return safely. With this, he decides to help as much as he can by offering her a flashlight and other items she might need. But upon opening the bag, they find Chukbok sleeping inside. At first, both of them are stunned. Hoping it's just their imagination, they rub their eyes. Both start sweating bullets upon realizing it's really her, sleeping in the bag. Meanwhile, after what seemed like a good nap, Chukbok slowly wakes up. But she is met by a furious glare from Z-Mama, with Gomdol in the background hoping she doesn't get scolded too much. Immediately, she is dumbstruck. However, she tries to pull a quick one, acting like she magically appeared. For her antics, she receives a well-deserved bump on the head and is forced to kneel. Then Gomdol begins scolding, "Wait, isn't he supposed to be the calm one?" But it turns out he is just acting as a translator for Z-Mama, who is expressing her frustration. What a wonderful family dynamic. Z-Mama then tells Gomdol to take Chukbok home despite having a lot more to say, and he reassures her. As she leaves, Chukbok tugs on her clothes, expressing her desire to follow. She points out that her mother is heading somewhere dangerous because of her and insists that they all go home together. But Z-Mama has already made up her mind to go, no matter what. She leaves with a face devoid of emotion as Chukbok continuously calls her name. Gomdol tries to calm her down, reminding her how strong her mom is and assuring her that she will come back. But Chukbok still blames herself for her mom leaving. Suddenly, Gomdol feels his stomach acting up and urges her to wait for a minute. Chukbok looks at him, puzzled. She stares in confusion as Gomdol exclaims that something must be wrong with his stomach. Slowly, Chukbok recalls the dark place and remembers how she felt back then. With that, the little one steels herself for her next action. Meanwhile, Z-Mama walks and blends amongst the horde of zombies, lost in thought. She thinks to herself that she should have at least reassured Chukbok that she would return. Her train of thought is interrupted as she and the entire horde of zombies suddenly notice a box among them. One zombie mutters that it smells good, while another wonders if it's food. Even without looking, Z-Mama can already tell who it is and breaks into a cold sweat. Meanwhile, Chukbok accidentally makes a cat sound and immediately realizes she has messed up. The entire horde of zombies charges toward her, but in the next moment, they are all surprised to see her in midair, caught by Z-Mama's stinger, and successfully landing in her arms. Z-Mama expresses a bit of relief, but it's not over yet as the zombies shift their attention to Z-Mama holding Chukbok in her arms. Z-Mama uses one zombie as a stepping stone, quickly leaping far into the air while Chukbok calls out to her. Meanwhile, she thinks when her daughter will learn. From behind, tentacles reach out from the horde, aiming to grab her, but she easily deals with them as if they are nothing and lands safely. Quickly, another zombie charges toward her. Z-Mama easily takes it down, along with a few others, using her hunting tools, all while still holding Chuckbok. However, citing her exhaustion, she realizes it's becoming difficult and wonders if she should use it once. Suddenly, Chuckbok calls for her attention, pointing upward and telling her to look. Looking up, Mama notices that the dark clouds are quickly dispersing. With this, she watches as an unfortunate zombie is caught in the sunlight and disintegrates. With this in mind, she decides to head into the dungeon quickly, noting that the building will soon become overrun with zombies. Suddenly, a zombie, who was clearly some kind of pervert before he died, slashes her from behind. Chuckbok quickly calls out to her as Mama grits her teeth tightly. This zombie is agile and easily dodges Mama's stinger like it's nothing. He returns the favor by delivering multiple slashes to Mama while Chuckbok expresses her worrying about her mom's well-being. Desperate, Chuckbok pleads for her mom to move as the perverted zombie prepares to deliver another massive slash. But then, the zombie immediately receives a special delivery and axe to the back of the head. Meanwhile, Mama ponders about the axe and wonders where it came from. Deciding not to dwell on it, she quickly heads into the dungeon, knowing it's the safest place because even the horde avoids entering. Meanwhile, Gomdol finally arrives at the dungeon village. Peering inside, he sees a swarm of zombies roaming and waiting. The sight sends him to his knees, lamenting his mistake of leaving Chuckbok alone just to take a dump. As he wallows in regret, Hira approaches him from behind, leaving him puzzled. Gomdol, on the other hand, desperately wants to know who she is. But before he can utter a word, he's met with a sharp whack to the face from her axe. And just like that, Hira delivers a free, painful lesson on how to properly train Chuckbok. The scene shifts to Mama, visibly annoyed as she glares at Chuckbok. She questions why Chuckbok followed her, pointing out how dangerous the situation is. Mama sternly warns that Chuckbok will be in serious trouble if they manage to survive this ordeal. But Mama is taken aback when Chuckbok gently takes her hand, trembling as she explains she was scared not for herself, but for her mom. With tears streaming down her face, Chuckbok admits she's been quietly watching everything her mother has endured for her sake. The weight of it all has left her deeply worried. Through sobs, Chuckbok expresses her concern, saying she wants her mom to be safe and that she wants to stay by Mama's side. Mama closes her eyes, overwhelmed by her daughter's feelings. As she embraces Chuckbok, she realizes just how much strength her little one has and resolves to protect her. The scene transitions to Mama walking among the zombie horde, carrying Chuckbok while the undead stare at them with mild confusion. Hiding Chuckbok seems to be drawing attention, and Mama mentally pleads with her daughter to stay silent. As she carefully moves forward, Mama realizes that the path to the exit might be easier than anticipated. All she has to do is avoid bumping into the zombies, but suddenly, she feels an ominous presence behind her. Breaking into a cold sweat, Mama tries to remain calm, knowing that any reaction could spell danger for Chuckbok. To her relief, the presence gradually retraces as quickly as it appeared. However, her relief is short-lived as a mocking voice comments on her useless efforts. Startled, Mama turns around but sees nothing. Regaining her composure, she wonders how the zombie could erase its presence so effortlessly. Shaking off her unease, she focuses on the goal. The exit isn't far now. Suddenly, a massive hand appears out of nowhere, looming above the horde of wandering zombies. Alarmed, Mama narrowly dodges the strike by stepping back and creating some distance. As she tries to process what just happened, she notices the hand grabbing other zombies. It doesn't take long for her to realize this is the dungeon boss. Another massive hand emerges, causing the zombie horde to scatter in fear. Mama curses the difficulty of moving quickly while surrounded by zombies but pushes forward for Chuckbok's sake. As the monstrous hand grabs another group of unfortunate zombies, Mama finds herself among them. Despite this, she manages to save Chuckbok, who escapes the grasp, rolling to safety in the process. Chuckbok stares at her mother in shock, softly muttering her name as tears begin to stream down her face. Seeing her mother captured, she breaks down, crying. But Mama, known for her quiet resolve, suddenly yells a single word: "Run." For the first time, Chuckbok hears her mother speak. Stunned, she hesitates. But Mama's voice, full of desperation and love, jolts her into action. Chuckbok bolts away, tears blurring her vision as her mother's voice echoes in her ears, urging her to survive. Mama feels a moment of relief knowing her daughter escaped. However, the dungeon boss tightens its grip, threatening to crush her. Determined to protect her daughter, Mama channels all her strength into her razor-sharp nails. With precision and ferocity, she strikes at the dungeon boss, muttering for it to let her go. Her violent attack lands effectively, causing the dungeon boss to release its grip and cry out in pain. As soon as Mama hits the ground, she dashes off, her mind fixated on one thought: Chuckbok must remain safe. With all her might, she silently promises that she will save her. The scene shifts to the dungeon boss. A foot emerges slowly from the darkness, revealing a startling figure. It's a woman with grotesque arm-like appendages growing from her legs. She steps forward, her voice dripping with menace as she wonders aloud about the whereabouts of her little child. What this means is a mystery we're sure to uncover soon. Meanwhile, we see Chuckbok. The little one is utterly exhausted, having run non-stop from a chasing horde of zombies. Her breaths are ragged, her small body trembling. Suddenly, she trips and falls with a loud thud. As she lies on the ground, a zombie lunges toward her, its mouth wide open, ready to devour her. Just when it seems like her end is near, another zombie intervenes, killing the attacker in a swift, brutal motion. Chuckbok is horrified by the sight, a cold chill running down her spine. The remaining zombies stand frozen, too afraid to make a move toward her. Their expressions are filled with fear, as if this particular zombie terrifies even them. The sinister zombie slowly approaches Chuckbok, a wicked grin on its face. It looms over her, clearly intending to claim her for itself. The little one shakes in terror, tears welling up in her eyes. The zombie begins toying with her, prolonging her fear as she mentally calls out for her mother to save her. Just as the zombie is about to finish her off, something shifts. The air grows cold, and a chilling sensation washes over the horde. Suddenly, every zombie in the vicinity bolts, abandoning Chuckbok in a desperate attempt to save themselves. Bewildered, Chuckbok looks around, unsure of what just happened. She notices a foul smell in the air and instinctively covers her nose, wondering aloud about its source. Before she can piece things together, she's knocked off her feet by an elongated arm. Her candies scatter across the ground as a figure slowly approaches. It turns out to be a zombie child, likely the child of the dungeon boss. The child stares at her with curiosity, clearly wanting to play. Chuckbok tries to gather her scattered candies but freezes in shock as the zombie kid picks up one of them, inspecting it closely. When Chuckbok protests loudly, claiming the candies belong to her parents and that she worked hard to find them, the zombie kid simply gives her a dismissive look before gulping one down. Chuckbok watches, her eyes wide and mouth agape, utterly stunned. Remembering the risks she took and the effort she put in to collect those candies, she becomes enraged. Without a second thought, she charges at the zombie kid, her anger boiling over. She delivers a solid smack, causing the zombie kid to spit out one of the candies. Ignoring the obvious danger, she grabs the zombie kid by the cheeks and begins pinching furiously, completely disregarding the fact that he's a literal zombie who could tear her apart. What ensues is a chaotic, childish wrestling match between the two. Chuckbok suddenly gains the upper hand, pinning the zombie kid to the ground. She mounts him and rains down a series of relentless weak punches. The zombie kid retaliates, managing to land a punch of his own, but Chuckbok isn't having it. Furious, she abandons all rules and bites the zombie kid's head from behind, clinging to him tightly. Unable to handle the assault, the zombie kid breaks free and runs away, sobbing in defeat. Bruised and battered but victorious, Chuckbok stands tall. With a triumphant grin, she wipes her face and mutters to herself, confident that the zombie kid won't mess with her again. The zombies watch in awe, never expecting Chuckbok's sudden display of strength. Their faces show fear, and they stagger back at her presence. As she sneezes, they scatter like frightened animals, their metaphorical tails between their legs. Chuckbok, noticing the bad smell in the air, realizes it's from her fight with the zombie kid. With this thought, she assures herself there's nothing to fear. Determined, she quickly takes off, hoping to find her mom. Suddenly, two zombies stop Chuckbok by grabbing her. To her shock, they remarked that she smells like the child of the dungeon boss. Chuckbok's face freezes in disbelief. The hooded zombie, Chaigun, points out that Chuckbok is definitely human, while the zombie lady, Da-yeon, immediately expresses how delicious she might be. Da-yeon, poking Chuckbok's cheek gently, comments on how cute she looks. Chuckbok, trembling, wonders what she can possibly do in this situation. Chaigun then asks Da-yeon if they should take Chuckbok. Da-yeon eagerly agrees, saying Chuckbok would make a great snack. Panicking, Chukbok pleads with them to let her go, saying she needs to find her mom. Da-yeon, feigning shock, pretends to sympathize with Chukbok's worries but then suddenly declares she will adopt her, leaving Chukbok utterly baffled. Chae-gun, however, interrupts Da-yeon, reminding her of their mission to help their father find the child of the dungeon boss. He suggests offering Chukbok as a snack isn't such a bad idea. Annoyed, Da-yeon protests, claiming she at least deserves an arm since she found Chukbok. Hearing this, Chukbok grows even more anxious. To everyone's surprise, the big fellow slyly suggests they could just eat Chukbok and not inform their father. This sends chills down Chukbok's spine. Both of them are planning to eat her. Desperately, she claims herself and tries to think of a way out. Pretending to spot her mom in the distance, Chukbok shouts out loudly, "Mom." Both Chae-gun and Da-yeon fall for the trick and tilt their heads to look. Seizing the moment, Chukbok bolts off, running as fast as her legs can carry her. Chae-gun watches her run and comments on her surprising speed for her age, while Da-yeon smirks, noting it's futile because she looks even cuter while running. They immediately give chase as Chukbok sprints with all her strength, but Chae-gun notices something strange. Chukbok is unknowingly running into a horde of zombies. Surprisingly, the zombies avoid her, sensing something about her presence. Realizing the trouble, Chae-gun and Da-yeon prepare their hunting tools and effortlessly clear out the horde. Chukbok, watching in horror, realizes she has to find her mom quickly or she'd meet her end. Determined, she dashes further away, whispering to herself that she must escape. Da-yeon suddenly launches her scorpion-like stinger at Chukbok, announcing that she can't get away. Luckily, Chukbok dodges, and the stinger accidentally hits an unfortunate zombie instead. Furious and annoyed, Da-yeon chases after her again. After running for what feels like forever, Chukbok finally finds a spot to catch her breath. With teary eyes, she reflects on her actions, whispering that she misses her parents and her friend, Hira. Suddenly, Chae-gun appears, teasing her that their game of hide-and-seek is over. He demands that she stop running and hand herself over. Filled with anxiety, Chukbok's mutated finger starts acting up, cracking ominously. Out of fear, she waves her hand, telling him to stay away. Her elongated black nail accidentally slashes Chae-gun's hand. At first, Chae-gun doesn't react, but seconds later, he begins screaming in pain, clutching his hand. He demands to know what Chukbok did to him, shouting that his hand feels like it's burning. Meanwhile, Chukbok stares at her mutated finger, her mind racing as she tries to process what just happened.